Welcome to the Rockstar Roundup. So, this is a bit of a different format this week. What we're going to be doing is talking to people from all over the world, experts in customer experience, about the week in CX, the news stories, the articles that have happened in this week, and just, chat away about them. So, today we've got a really cool guy. His name is Clint Payne, and he's from South Africa. And you know what? I might as well just let him introduce himself. So, through the power of the interwebs, you there, mate? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are you, James?
I'm doing good, man, apart from being ridiculously tired because of a baby. Other than that, I'm good, man. So look,
Good.
Tell everyone who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into it.
My name's Clint. I'm from South Africa. I work for DSTV. We are a pay TV provider. We're essentially the biggest pay TV provider in Africa. We've got just over 7 million subscribers in South Africa, and my job is customer experience for the pay TV group. So that's what I'm about from Monday to Friday, sort of thing.
Nice. So you definitely got some pedigree there, definitely going to know your stuff. So look, Clint has got 3 stories for us now that we're going to be looking at. So tell me, what is story number 1? What is article number 1? What are we calling them? Stories, articles? I don't even know. We'll figure that out.
We'll figure it out later. So
yeah.
Here goes number 1.
Right.
This is something I think, a story I told Steve, and it was something he kind of said to me, well, why are you thinking like that? I think it's a little bit unique to Africa. And here's how the story goes. I went to a presentation by Ipsos, and they were showing us how customers engage with brands across the continent. And they were looking at the top 5 brands on the African continent, and how there's this disconnect between a functional and emotional engagement for customers.
Yeah.
Broadly, on the functional level, our consumers engage really well with brands, but when it comes to being an emotional resident or building an emotional connection or resonance with the brand, there's this disconnect. For some reason, our African consumer doesn't resonate with the brand as well as their Western counterpart.
Right.
And it sort of stuck in the back of my head. And then they went on to talk about, what is the African continent about? And we got into this discussion around Black Panther. Have you seen Black Panther?
The movie,
the Marvel movie.
Yeah.
It's
Wakanda forever.
Yeah, Wakanda forever. Now, aside from being terribly successful abroad, it's also the most successful movie in Africa ever.
Whoa.
Yeah, on the African continent is singularly the most successful movie we've ever had. And there's suddenly 2 pennies that kind of dropped, and there was a connection that I realized what was happening. And here's what I was thinking, right? And I may be talking rubbish, so be warned, this may be complete bollocks. But anyway, you look at what that movie is, the standard recipe for God, for argument's sake, in any Marvel movie or any Western movie is Morgan Freeman in a white room in a white suit, right? That's the recipe for God and heaven. But when you look at Black Panther, when the main character goes to heaven, he doesn't go back to see Morgan Freeman in a white room. He actually goes back onto the African savannah, and it's not just his father; it's his father's and his father's father and all his forebears who are on this beautiful African setting talking to him. Think about how the women are portrayed in that movie. Think about all the cultural references that exist inside that movie, and it suddenly dawned on me. The reason why Black Panther is so remarkably successful in Africa, it's taken the superhero genre and it hasn't westernized an African superhero. It's idealized it. It's made it the best possible version of Africa that they could be. And that's why we love it so much. And suddenly the penny dropped. As big brands, big organizations, particularly those of us who get our products and our services from other copies across the world, like Sky and so on.
Yeah.
We take services, we take products, we take systems that originate out of the West, and we copy and paste them and put them into Africa in an African context. And they work. Functionally, our customers engage with them. They find relevance. But they never find an emotional connection because we take a very Western experience and we simply copy it and place it in Africa.
Yeah.
Where we should be taking that experience and idealizing it in an African context. So I think the disconnect for African consumers lies in the fact that the way we present our products is still quite flavored from a Western point of view.
Yeah.
And we haven't yet cracked that. We haven't yet cracked it. We don't really know what the answer is quite yet. About how do you take those experiences that are, quite traditionally Western, and how do we make them the ideal African consumer experience that'll make our customers love our brand and not just accept what we're delivering to them. That's kind of where I'm going with this.
It's really interesting because I think where it comes from is there's this mindset of standardization, and you create something good that works well one place, and you think, well, let's just do that everywhere. Like I was working with a bank before, and it was an Arabic bank, and they'd created the perfect process for Dubai, and then they referred to it as a bank in a box, and they were like, now what we're going to do is we're going to take this everywhere else in the world and roll it out. And I'm like, dude, that probably ain't going to work, because it's this idea of, I mean, customers are customers, but people are different. And that's the point, isn't it? It's trying to understand our customers at a deeper level and really understanding who they are. And culture and geographic location plays a massive part of that. How much of how much of a part do you think that plays in creating experiences and for brands? Do you think the geographic cultures have to be front and center, or is it just something that people have to think about in the back of their minds? What's your take on it?
I think it's about your maturity.
Yeah.
I think that as a brand, I'm going to put it say it like it is. If your service is really shit, there's lots and lots of room to improve. And the thing about what I've found and what I've seen in our environment is that when your service isn't up to scratch, just getting the service right is the most important thing that you can do.
Yeah.
When you get that right, that's the ticket to the game. And then things like culture, things like emotional resonance, brand promise, those things become exponentially more important. It doesn't mean you can't do the service that you're supposed to be doing. That functional stuff becomes your ticket to the game, and you absolutely have to deliver on that every time. But the great thing about this customer experience world is that, our job's never done. We have a job of meeting a customer's expectation. The moment you meet that expectation, you physically change it.
Yeah, that's the...
And that's, you meet an expectation, you'll change it, and then you create the next job to do. And that I think is what makes it interesting and important. It becomes important when you're good at doing the functional stuff. It's not as important if you're shit at doing the functional stuff.
Yeah, I get that. And that is the thing. There are lots of companies that are trying to run before they can walk, and it's I've been noticing this lately, and I've been starting to talk about it a little bit, and it's understanding my role within companies a little bit more, because there's lots of consultants out there that are very good at turning bad experiences good. But for instance, with me personally, where my talents lie is helping a company turn a good experience great. And it's that there's almost like two stages. The first stage that you spoke about is just getting in the game, you know what I mean? Just getting there, just getting on an even keel. But then there are other companies that are, if we're being fair, delivering consistently pretty decent experiences, and there's not much you can pick up with them. It's those guys that then need to take it to the next level, and there's different concepts and different ideas that are going to take you there. Whereas if the shitty guys try and do the wicked stuff immediately, there's that disconnect there because they haven't even got the fundamentals right. So that's so what would you say your like big learning point from that sort of idea is? That thinking about, so in Africa, the reason that movie was so good is because realistically it was personalized for the types of people that were going to be watching it. Can you take those ideas and translate them into a customer experience world? What's your big takeaway from that?
So this is where it becomes tricky, and I suppose solving a problem is half the job of solving a problem is understanding the problem in the first place. Yeah. So I don't yet have the answer. I tell you, I've got a couple of good ideas about how to get the answer. So the first thing and we've already done this, and this is why it's the story of the week. I met with 3 groups of third-year marketing students. Yeah. And I set them a brand challenge and said, here's the brand challenge. And I gave them this exact same story and said, so you're millennials, you are the right customer in this context. Tell us how to do this. So I'm really hoping that they're going to go out there and find all of these amazing solutions to this particular problem. So that's I think the first thing that the first approach that we're taking. There is also a very interesting phenomenon in South Africa, and I think that if anybody from South Africa or Africa in general is watching, it's something about language. It's your culture and your language are really quite intertwined. And very often you'll find people saying, particularly if they don't speak English, they'll say, in my language we say, or I know I do. I'm a native English speaker, but I also speak Afrikaans. So if I'm abroad and, that I get asked a question, I'll sometimes say, in Afrikaans, we would say it like this, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. There's something very personal about language. And for us in South Africa, it's quite tricky. We have 11 official languages. So how do you create a service environment that can deal with 11 official languages? And I think what we've done, what most big brands have done in this country, is they've said 11's a bridge too far. We're going to standardize it down to 1, maybe 2, if we're lucky 3. So there's, I think, there's a loss of personality or loss of emotional engagement that happens when you standardize away from your native mother tongue that we need to think about. And then there are these beautiful nuances in South Africa where if you're served by somebody and they, for argument's sake, and they're making change out of a cash register, very often a South African will cross their arm in front of their chest and pass the change across to you as a sign of respect. There are tiny little nuanced things in South Africa that we have ignored for the longest time. I think the key to the emotional engagement is finding those nuances and discovering how to reinvigorate them in a service environment. Make them loud and proud and front and center once again.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't get me wrong, I do understand. Like, do you know what the percentage split of the language, those 11 languages are? Like, is there like what are the biggest, most widely spoken languages?
You're talking about Zulu, Sotho, and then English is very widely spoken, although it's not necessarily a home language.
Okay, so I suppose, like, if you're a company going in there that isn't natively South African, I can imagine it'd seem like a lot of work to try and deliver what you need to deliver in 11 different languages.
Imagine trying to do. Imagine an IVR in 11 official languages.
Press, because you've only got 9 buttons anyway. It'd be press 1 for this, press 11 for
exactly.
Well, that doesn't. The thing is, though, although it does seem like a lot of effort, if somebody were to come in and do that, what do you think the effect would be?
This is an interesting thing because the effect is not going to be the same for every language. There are in the smaller language groups, and I'm going out on a limb here, and I'm going to go. I'm going to generalize just a little bit here, but I think it's a relatively fair generalization. But there are a selection of South African languages where the ability to speak English is seen as something to be proud of. So I have a home language, but I've learned and I can speak English and I can do business in English, and therefore this is something I want to be proud of. I feel I take pride in being able to speak in English. And then there are a selection of languages who find it incredibly offensive not to conduct language in their home tongue. They feel quite the reverse. So this is a difficult conundrum. It's a hard nut to crack for South Africans because I don't think the answer is as simple as doing it in 11 languages. I think we need to think about what those languages are and then, adapt accordingly. Through the joy of the internet, I can tell you that Zulu is the most popular language spoken by 23% of our population.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I've spent a fair amount of time in South Africa, and of course, everywhere I've been spoke English pretty well, so I didn't have to worry about any of the other languages. But do most companies conduct business in Zulu as well? Then no, even though it's the most. Why is that?
That's a very good question. I think therein is the answer. I think that's probably the biggest question to ask. Why aren't we conducting language business in the language of our choice, of our customer's choice?
What is the socio-economic situation of people that speak exclusively Zulu?
They used to predominantly be in KwaZulu-Natal, which is where Durban is on the coast. But Zulu is spoken across the country now, and they're a very powerful nation, a very proud nation of Zulu-speaking men and women. So it's just listing the 11 official ones: Zulu, Xhosa, Afrikaans, English, North Sotho, Tswana, Sotho, Tsonga, Swati, Venda, and Ndebele, and all of them are fundamentally different.
Yeah, I knew those.
Liar.
I think the only one I knew was English. But so, do you think companies look at the different? So, let's say, for example, if there's one of those languages that's only spoken by like 0.5% of people, do you think companies look at it and say, well, you know what, it's not really worth our time?
They absolutely do. I can tell you for a fact they absolutely do. And here's the other thing is that a language, the language groups are decentralized in the country. So there are the big languages are spoken broadly across the country, but smaller languages like Ndebele, Swati, Venda, these are tiny languages with significant but smaller groups of people that speak them. Your challenge is that the people who are going to serve customers in those languages aren't where your business is. More than likely, your business is going to be in a major center like Johannesburg, Durban, or Cape Town, and people who speak Venda are going to be very, very far from that. And you're going to battle immensely to staff for that kind of language. So it's not an easy answer. There are lots of challenges around that.
So, I mean, let's say, so which one is the least spoke language?
I would say probably Swati or something along those lines.
Okay. So let's say, for argument's sake, it's Swati. What type of employment do people who speak mostly Swati have? Like, what sort of jobs would they technically have?
I can tell you that they will probably be rural. So I've just looked again on the list. Ndebele is only spoken by 2% of our population, and they are going to be very rural. So there's migration to cities all across the country, but the majority of Ndebele speakers are going to be rural farmers, rural laborers, that kind of stuff. We're going to be far away from major cities.
Yeah, see, it's almost a chicken and egg situation because if it's a small population that actually speak the language and they're doing work that isn't traditionally high earning work, then I imagine companies are like, well, they don't really have all that much money. It's going to be really difficult for us to. No, that's not me saying that. That's me thinking that maybe what a company's thinking. It's going to cost us a lot of money to do that. However, if they did decide to operate in that language, they would then have to get people who can speak that language into it, which would then give more opportunities. Which you see what I mean there? It's almost like it would be a snowball effect. If every company in South Africa said tomorrow we're going to operate in that language, they would then have to reach out to people who can speak that language, get them in, employ them, train them. Then the population speaking that language would be earning more money. They'd probably go back and teach their parents, teach their brothers and sisters, their kids, etc., other languages. I don't know. It seems like there's a
brands would resonate with those people that are being uplifted by that particular brand. It would spread through the community. It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy to some extent.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of opportunity there that's just being missed because it's a lot of effort. So,
yeah.
Okay, cool. So, right. So let's move on from that one. But before we move on, what would be your one big takeaway? So the people watching this looking to improve their customer experience, what should they learn from that story?
Don't assume necessarily that just taking something that's worked anywhere else and copy and pasting it and delivering it flawlessly is going to give you the customer resonance or the love that you're seeking. You need to look a little bit deeper. It may, but it may not.
Boom, perfect, gold. Right, so what's the next story?
Story number 2 is something I've kept in my back pocket for a really, really long time, and this is it's a story about jobs to be done, and it comes off the back of some research that I was exposed to about a year ago or so, and I met with the people who told me the story this week, and it reminded me again of this particular engagement that I had with them. So there's the old wives' tale that Mars Bar, the Mars company who make Mars Bar and Snickers. Yes. Mars Bar was concerned that Snickers was eating into the market share of the Mars Bar chocolate, and they couldn't understand why Snickers was selling and Mars Bars wasn't. So they did some really great qual research, and what they discovered is that actually, from a customer's point of view, from a consumer's point of view, and in their mind, the two pieces of candy do something completely different. And it's really odd because the net difference between those two people, and if you've had one or two of these chocolates in the past, as I have, you'll know that the net difference between the two of them is peanuts. They have the same nougat, same caramel, same chocolate. It's just Snickers as peanuts, right? Only difference. But there's a leap of logic that a consumer makes when they eat a Snickers bar. It has peanuts, therefore it's nearly like an apple. And because it's nearly like an apple, it probably could be lunch, and therefore it's almost a sandwich. Yeah. So a Snickers bar is lunch. However, Mars Bar's got no peanuts. It has no redeeming features at all. It's an indulgence. It's like a glass of wine. It's like a walk on the beach. You're actually just treating yourself. You're indulging. So it has no real value to it. Effectively, the two things are they're almost the same thing, a piece of candy, but they're doing completely different jobs. One is a meal substitute. The other is an indulgence. And they're not eating into each other's lunch because, well, one's lunch and one isn't, for a start.
Yeah.
So Gartner took that, they took that leap of logic and they extended it to the customer space. And they started looking at what is the job to be done based on the channel a customer uses to contact a brand, an organization. And this is particularly prevalent amongst people banging the omni-channel drum. So many people, are talking about, we need to be omni-channel, et cetera. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I would say this, is that if you look at what that Gartner research, formerly the CEB, the Corporate Executive Board, but if you look at what they found from the 6,000 plus organizations that they work with throughout the world, is that the job to be done in a customer's mind is going to vary substantially dependent on what channel they use. If they want a human connection, so they want to talk to someone and be understood on a more emotional and intimate level, they will make a telephone call and seek to speak to a call center agent. If they only want information, they're probably not even going to talk to you. They're going to talk to friends, family, go online, ask Google. Yeah. If they want a proof point relationship, so I want to be able to refer back to this in the future in case something goes wrong. They're going to use email because it's a recorded proof point kind of relationship that says, I'm going to hit you with a stick later on if you don't do what I ask. Yeah. If they want a purely instructional relationship, so if they've got faith and they have confidence in you, the relationship will be instructional and they will simply just use web chat to tell you, do this. They want to enter into engagement. They don't want to enter into a discussion around it. It's an instructional one-way relationship. And then the final thing is that if they talk to you in social media, they're actually not talking to you. They're talking to you with all of their friends listening. So that relationship isn't one-to-one, it's many-to-one. So it's each of those jobs is nuanced. And what I find incredibly interesting is that in this age of omni-channel, we focus, sometimes I wonder if it's not to the detriment of experiences, on making things omni-channel. Because I know in our organization, the person who answers the email is the same person who takes a web chat, is the same person who will answer a social media post, is the same person who may take a telephone call. We focus on omni-channel, and that's okay because strategically it's probably the right thing to do. But do we know that in the recruitment process or the training process or the skilling process, we need to get that omni-channel person to be able to switch between each of those jobs to be done as the source of that customer engagement varies from moment to moment. So that's story number 2 for me this week.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it, because omni-channel is is an interesting concept, because the questions you've got to ask is, well, do we want to deliver the exact same experience across every channel, or do we want to tailor the experience dependent on the channel, because different types of people are likely to do different, ways and means of contact. And then so it's a hard way to answer, really, because it's almost as if people talk about, well, I'm going to start a process on my laptop, and then I'm going to do some of it on a phone, then I'm going to pick it up in an app, and then I don't know the statistics of this, but usually if I start something on a particular platform, I'm probably going to end it on that particular platform as well. Other than if I go to the internet to find out something, I can't find out something, then I call in. I don't go through like 78 different channels. And so I guess different types of people will choose different types of contact, and therefore should be dealt with in different ways. And when you say jobs to be done, can that be looked at as like outcomes as well, the outcome they're trying to achieve, or is it something completely different in your mind?
You can look at it from an outcomes point of view. The important thing about the definition of jobs to be done is that it's not the organization's job to be done. It's what the customer's job to be done. So, it could be as simple as, and I'll tell you why it's the answer's not black or white. In that very instructional relationship that one finds in web chat, the job to be done there will be really, really functional. It's like, in our case, we have to, what is the balance I have to pay for my account? Yeah. That's a really one-sided instructional relationship. At that point, in the web chat environment, potentially that customer just wants a rands and cents or pounds and cents or dollars and cents value. They don't want an engagement around it.
Yeah.
But they could be asking that very same question of an agent over a telephone. And at that point, they would be seeking a different kind of engagement. They want to be understood, heard. They want more explanation. They want more detail. They want that kind of stuff around. So I don't know if it's black and white like that.
Well, because I suppose the thing is, it's like, so finding a balance, for example, it depends what the purpose of that is. If it's curiosity, that's one thing. If it's because you're worried about whether you can feed yourself this month, that's a little bit different. If it's if you're thinking of buying a car, I suppose it does. What is the purpose of finding that out? And I suppose then the ways and means you're going to go about doing it are going to be very different. You bring up about chat, like sort of web chats and things. I was pretty skeptical about them when they first came out, and I thought, it's just some other shitty thing that's going to piss me off. However, I've actually found that I actually quite like web chats. They when you need simple information quickly that needs a little bit of nuance to it, like needs a little bit of explaining, they're pretty cool. Chatbots, I really don't get just yet. I don't know whether I'm just a laggard or something like that, but I find them to just be glorified search engines.
I agree.
Am I correct with that, or is there something I'm just not seeing?
No, I'm with you there. And I have to preface that by saying at my age, potentially I'm not the right market, but that may be the problem. But I tend to agree with you there. I think that we'll find them mature over time. I think we'll find them become better. Yeah. I read somewhere really interestingly that the bots that have been deployed on Facebook Messenger, something to the tune of 70% of them are not working anymore because they were vanity exercises to start off with.
Yeah.
The thing that, the question I've always asked is, let's say for argument's sake, in this connected world that we all live in, where you've got these great apps that are in the palm of your hand, there's certain apps that lend themselves and certain brands that lend themselves to types of transactions. I would be far more likely to go onto my banking app and pay my telephone account or my TV account than I would be to go onto my telephone account or my TV account and try and pay it via my banking app. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a level of trust that a banking app would engender for me to be able to make a payment, because that's what it does.
Yeah.
And if I went onto an app that does streaming, do I feel the same way about a financial transaction on an app that does streaming? I'm not sure. I think that we've got a way to go before that kind of where apps and online services, chatbots included, become so good at doing everything that we trust them completely to do anything at any time. Because I think it's a trust issue for me anyway.
Yeah. It is, and that's it's a difficult one, and it's almost going to take a whole generation of people that have grown up in that world to have that level of trust. There's, of course, like us, I say us oldies, but I don't really want to class myself as an oldie, but I guess I am, because part of my life I didn't have the internet, therefore I'm literally a granddad. But it's a case of, I think we have less trust than the I don't even know what a millennial is. What is a millennial? Like what age range is a millennial?
I have no idea. I just know I'm not one.
Yeah, I just think they wear beanies all of the time. That's how you spot a millennial. Whether it's summer, whether it's just all of the time wearing a beanie, bang, millennial.
Millennial. It's taken me years to trust Siri to make a phone call on my behalf.
Yeah, that's and to be fair, since I started using the voice thing, I love it now, because I'll set an alarm and I'll do this, that, and the other. But still, like it still annoys me sometimes, because you start to trust it more and more, and you build up this relationship, and then you ask it to do something, and it's like, no, I can't do that, and you feel that your trust has been shattered,
let down. Yeah,
a tear rolls down your cheek, and then
what have you done to me?
Yeah, and then of course you decide to move to Alexa, and then you know that Siri can hear you talking to Alexa, and you're like, she feel bad, or I don't know, man. It's like, and then when the robots rise up and take over the world, who's going to win? Is it going to be Alexa? Is it going to be Siri? I don't know. I don't know whose side to take.
Who nicest to?
Yeah.
Who did I treat the best?
Yeah, and it's kind of like, we're going off track, but this is good. I feel really bad when I don't say please and thank you to the thing.
Siri.
Yeah. So I do it anyway. Right, I probably look like a right wanker walking around saying, like, set alarm for 3:30, please, Siri. Thank you. But seriously, when they do rise up and take over the world, I would like to think they're going to remember the people that were polite to them, and we'll get mercy. So
we'll get the office jobs.
Yeah, hopefully. That's God.
The rest will be on the treadmill powering the world.
Exactly. That's some dystopian. That's some Black Mirror shit right there, man. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Oh God,
really good.
Oh, mate. But I've forgotten the point. We're on omni-channel. So let's say there's some people watching and they're thinking, well, you know what? I'm just starting out on my omni-channel journey. What advice would you give them?
Make sure that the people you put in that omni-channel are worth it. Omni-channel isn't a job to be done by your most junior person. Omni-channel is a job to be done by your best people. So save that responsibility for the people who are really, really good.
Yeah, and to be fair, it does seem that traditionally you would just stick your low-level guys in there because, and it's so that's a great way of thinking. Don't just throw your entry-level guys at it. Throw your experienced guys at it that can deal with different people in different ways with multiple inquiries. That's great advice, man. Okay, so third and final story for the week.
Third and final story. I was talking. I'm a big CXPA fan. I love the way that organization thinks about customer experience. I love the way they treat our discipline. And one of the things I really appreciate about that is the way being part of the CXPA has forced me to start thinking about things that traditionally don't fall inside of our traditional customer experience mold. I think that so many, I know here in South Africa, if you're looking for a customer experience vendor, they're going to be really good at potentially measurement, maybe design. Some are going to be great strategists. They're going to be these people who can come and tell you, well, this is how I'm going to add value and give you ROI in your business. But so few of them actually will come back to you and say, you know what you cannot forget is culture. There is a whole body of work that I think isn't yet fully explored, especially in South Africa, around what is the work we should be doing in the culture space to make sure that customer experience is something that our organization understands. And it's a realization I got to quite by accident because probably 3 years ago, our organization reorganized itself and we became the customer group, and I was part of this massive group. And the chief customer officer called me and said, Clint, I need a program. I need a campaign. We do some internal comms to tell everybody customer experience, how important it is and what we should be living. And I went, okay, Let me see what I can do. I chatted with a great friend of mine who I've done some amazing internal work with. I gave her the brief. She went away for a couple of days and she came back to me and said, well, here's the story. I can print mouse pads and hand out coffee mugs, and I can say, you know, customer experience is really important. And if you want to pay me huge amounts of money to do that, I'm all about that. I think that that's fantastic. But I've got this weird idea that I just think might work. And off the back of that, we created a campaign called #99. And #99 is essentially a customer campaign. It's a culture campaign. But we avoided all the traps of these internal comms things around, you know, have a mouse pad and here's a slogan, and here are the 5 things to do, and this is an acronym and so on. Yeah. We literally went and took 99 things that customers complained about. We put them on a massive, massive television screen in the atrium of our building. We put them on a website, and we told our staff, solve those problems. We gave them a year to do it. We didn't tell them how. We didn't tell them we'd give them any money. We just said, these are the problems our customers have every day. Fix them. And we let them loose. And I was petrified. I thought, oh, my God, this thing's never going to work. I'm going to be spending money here, and they're going to fire me in a year's time. Turns out a year later, I've taken that campaign all over the world. I've won 6 awards with that campaign. Internationally, I won an award for innovation at the CXPA in the May this year. Terry took this internal comms campaign. We've won the Grand Prix of Internal Communications Awards around this campaign. And everything we learned out of that campaign, every decision we've made, every direction we changed has been something that's been a retrospective realization. At the time, we didn't know really what we were doing. But now when I look back at the campaign at the end of it, I realized that the mechanisms, the decisions that I made, the things that we changed, and the way we approached this actually turned out to be really, really scientific. And I think that there's this body of work that's missing in the customer experience space around culture. We talk about it, we know it's important, we know that we need to have it, but I'm not yet sure we've fully articulated what the disciplines are, what the science is behind creating a customer experience culture in an organization.
Well, that's it's an interesting point. So I've got a new book coming out at some point. I don't know when it's going to be.
That's why I love yours, by the way. Great reading, 1 line a page. It's up my alley.
That's my sort of book, man. Well, this other one is going to have more than 3 words on each page, maybe. But it's maybe I'll just do it in a massive font. Yeah. So, and it's called "Put Your Customers Second," and it's talking about companies that manage to deliver amazing customer experiences by focusing on their employees, by focusing on their internal culture. And what I've sort of realized in there is there's 7 main elements that kind of need to be there to have a really like good customer centric culture. And so I'll run through them and tell me what you think about them. See if you think any of them you're not really right there, or if you think there's anything extra in that. So the first one, I don't really know what to call it. The first one, I used to call it vision, but it's more than vision. It's like it's either a vision, a mission, a purpose, a set of. But it's like a beacon, like a lighthouse, like a one thing that people can look at that they know together. This is what we're trying to achieve. So it's one thing that they can all get together on, whether that be the vision, the mission, or the purpose, whatever you want to say. And I find that companies that have got really sort of strong and memorable and authentic missions or purposes tend to do pretty well, because if you've had a shitty day or a shitty week and you don't want to get out of bed, at least you know why you're getting out of bed. You're getting out of bed to achieve something bigger than yourself. So there's that element to it. The next
it reminds me of that one of the Marriott Hotel. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Everyone in there knows that that's everybody's job. Yeah, you might answer phones. Yeah, you might fill in forms. Yeah, you might clean rooms, but that's what you do. That's not what you're there to achieve. It's a bigger thing. And then the next step is the alignment. So it's realizing that your processes and your experiences need to be aligned towards the delivery of that thing. Because again, like as you were saying, with like pretty pictures on the wall or mouse pads and shit like that, if you've got it plastered everywhere, but nothing you do seems to be contributing towards it, you're going to be thinking it's just a platitude, which in a lot of companies it is. The next one is capabilities, training up your people well enough to do what's expected of them. Because you got to think, if you're going to be anxious every single day, if there's things expected of you and you just know you can't do it, it's kind of like in the music world. If I got asked to join a band and I had no idea how to play any of their songs, and I even knew that the skill level needed to play those songs I just didn't have, which is very possible. I would be so anxious all the time. It doesn't matter whether they had a really good mission or if all their songs were aligned towards achieving that. If they're saying, James, we want you to be part of this, and I'm thinking, fuck, I can't play these songs. That's not going to be good. So there's the capabilities as well, training people to do what's expected of them. You got the workplace environment itself, like the actual physical environment. Which is, again, it kind of does fall into alignment as well. But it's like one of those things, like if one of your values, for example, is open and honest communication, yet everybody's in little cubicles, you got to realize that that's not conducive to achieving those things. You've got incentives, so incentivizing people to deliver that beacon, whatever it ends up being, resources, giving people the actual budget to be able to do. So like, Ritz-Carlton, we talk about hotels. It's like every employee has something like $2,000 discretionary spend to fix.
At any time.
Yeah, but they've got the budget to do it. And then the final part, which is what made me think of going through this, is empowerment. It's letting people know, look at everything we've set up for you. Be free, my pretties. Go and do it. Get it done. And that's the big thing for what you were saying about there, the hashtag 99. It's saying these are the problems we need to solve.
Yeah,
go and do it. Just get it done. You don't talk to us about it. Just get it done. And I love that part of it. It's letting people know that you trust them. It's letting people know that you recognize how smart and how capable they are. And you're saying, look, you don't need to talk to us about it. Just get it done. These are problems that need fixing. Please go and fix them. And it's that empowerment, knowing that you've got their back, knowing that you're going to look after them, knowing that they're not going to get in the shit for doing something wrong or making a little mistake, knowing that you're always going to be looking out to catch them doing things right rather than catching them doing things wrong. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that aligns with what you're talking about?
Oh, damn straight it does. I think it is all of those things exactly what the way we think about them in our space as well. And the funny thing is that if I would add one thing, I'd actually say the last thing is just do it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. There is, I think in the culture space, you are far better off doing something than doing nothing.
Yeah.
If it's that old adage, fail fast, learn quickly.
Definitely.
Especially for culture. It's not going to work for everybody. One more thing I would say, don't try and boil the ocean.
Yeah.
You can't do everything for everybody. You just can't do it. So just try and do a little bit.
Yeah. So I think for me, like if I were to give any advice about culture, because it's something that I'm really interested in, I think we need to try and understand that culture is really just a collection of repeated behaviors. Once behaviors are repeated enough times, that is your culture. But behaviors are influenced by our attitudes. So if you want to influence your culture, one of the easiest and quickest ways to do that is by starting to influence attitudes. And so it's focusing on the way that people think about what they do on it. And so, for example, getting a purpose, getting a mission for the company, letting people know that, rather than putting things all over the wall saying we're customer centric, maybe put things all over the wall saying what it is you're there to achieve, that bigger purpose. Letting people know that they are part of something different, and then that's going to change their attitude. And as soon as their attitudes change, their behaviors will change. Yeah. And then as soon as those behaviors happen often enough, bang, that is your culture. So what would your advice be?
I think that there's a very important element of walking the talk as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So the way the way you change people's attitude, the way you is this the old adage around charity begins at home, and this is something we've tried to apply with our C-suite as well. In '99, what we did is instead of just we actually popped the CEO into a technician's van, send him off to go and service to visit a customer's house, followed him with a camera crew, and then broadcast it across the organization.
Yeah,
and that level of sort of I suppose where the CEO's kind of, I'm in this too, and look, I can also do this, and I'll also do this. It's quite different to see the man who's usually in a suit up a ladder with a drill, hammering on a wall. It's a very different it's a very different point of view, and that level of commitment, and then the ones that followed on, because he went and challenged the chief financial officer, and we had the whole C-suite out in our customer world doing stuff, filming them and following them around. That created a lot of momentum in the campaign. So leadership starts at the top as well when it comes to culture. It's not just about all of the other stuff like revenue and sales and churn and all that kind of stuff. As much as it's your job to lead there, it's your job to demonstrate the culture as well. Definitely. In an organization.
I think that's great advice, really good advice. So we are done. Fantastic. What a way to end the week. Thank you so much for being with us, Clint. That is great. Anybody watching, look in the description. You can get in touch with Clint, add him on LinkedIn, follow his work. He does some great stuff, as you can see and hear right now. That has been the Rockstar Roundup. And until next week, keep on delivering that Rockstar customer experience.